Anyone But You isn't just a bad rom-com. It's an insult to me, personally. As somebody who has loudly proclaimed for at least the last 10 years that we need to bring back the late 90s tradition of redoing a Shakespeare or classic novel in the modern day, a la 10 Things I Hate About You, She's the Man and Clueless, I can't believe I'm about to say this. I don't want it if they're like this.
God damn it. I wonder that you will still be talking, Signor Benedict. Nobody marks you.
Do you know each other?
Yeah, we met.
Barely.
What, my dear Lady Disdain? Are you yet living?
Looks like every serial killer reenactment documentary. Why do you have a giant wrench?
This girl's a disaster. She's a nothing.
I'd rather hear my dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me.
I was about to protest that I love you.
Oh my God.
It is 34 degrees in Perth today. If I get heat stroke and die filming this today, like and subscribe. Consider joining my Patreon to give my family some funeral money. Not only is it barely a good cookie-cutter rom-com from the early 2000s, filled with cliches and the exact kind of bare minimum chemistry you get from sticking two attractive opposite-gender people in a room together, but it's also a terrible interpretation of Much Ado About Nothing. And like I said, that means it isn't just bad, it's an insult to me personally. Because Much Ado About Nothing is my favourite Shakespeare play, which is a high bar because I'm one of those weirdo freaks who reads Shakespeare for fun and has since high school. If any of you watch Smosh, I am Angela.
What did you bring?
I brought my complete works.
Holy.
Ew.
And this is, okay, I brought my complete works in some of my journals.
I've seen Shakespeare at the theatre numerous times. I've watched every movie possible. And every year when the travelling troupe comes into town, me and my friend Hayley go see them, like clockwork. Obviously, I adore Hamlet and Midsummer Night's Dream and Macbeth, but I also froth at the mouth over the deep cuts too. I'm a bi-writer who loves dramatic tragedy and comedy in combination, and so was Shakespeare. How could I not fall in love? And Much Ado About Nothing is his most bisexual play. Yes, even including his gender swap ones. Every bi person I know who has seen it identifies with it on a personal level. I've read it, seen every movie version of it, seen it in the theatre, and my favourite version is the filmed theatre production starring David Tennant as Benedict and Catherine Tate as Beatrice.
The prince is full. Huh?
You have lost the heart of Signor Benedict.
Indeed, my lord.
Well. I'll be revenged as I may.
You have put him down.
So I would not he should do me, my lord, lest I should prove the mother of fools.
Alright.
See what I mean? Bisexual. And much to my personal chagrin, there hasn't been a good modern adaptation of Much Ado. Joss Whedon did one, kinda, but it uses the original script, a la Romeo plus Juliet.
Scratching could not make it worse than where such a face as yours were.
Well, you are a rare parrot teacher.
A bird of my tongue is better than a beast of yours.
I would my horse had the speed of your tongue, and so good a continuer.
And you could argue that every single modern enemies to lovers romance is using the blueprint laid out by Much Ado, and you could also say that it's why I love that trope so much, but who's to know? But no true modern version exists. So naturally, about 2 or 3 years ago, I decided to write my own. First in novel form, and then as a script. So that I could not only do a modern Much Ado, but so that I could see it on screen and introduce it to a whole new audience of people that might have never seen or read it before. I had a good idea for how to modernize it, even if I do say so myself. I spent about a year bashing out the structure and ironing out plot inconsistencies and making sure it works. And then I had the very well documented health issues spring up around the time I officially started writing it. So I stopped for a while. And then a while became 18 months. But I still periodically pick it back up, write a scene or two, just so there's always a bit of progress being made. I've had a lot of novel ideas over the years, and you can usually tell which ones are going to stick around and haunt and pester you until they're finished. And this is definitely one of those. I'm extremely passionate about it. I adore these characters, and I'm proud of how I've modernized the setting and conflicts and kept the core themes of the original play. It's one of my pipe dreams to see it not only be published, but also to see it on the screen. So imagine my particular chagrin when Much Ado About Nothing was finally made into a modern rom-com. And it sucks so much ass. I've seen some other talented YouTubers I adore make videos about the things wrong with this movie, and I agree with them wholeheartedly, so I tried not to make this video. I figured nobody would care about my opinion on this, and I was sure my seething rage would pass, but it didn't. So now we're here, almost a year late to the party, and mad about it. From the first 15 minutes alone, I knew I was going to despise this movie. Julia Cudney actually broke it down so much better than I could, so you all should go and watch her video too. I've linked it below and above. But to elaborate on her thoughts here,
I call them unnecessary straightforwardly because they fail to establish nearly any information that couldn't be gleaned elsewhere. Like, they're immediately followed by a time jump to B&B's reintroduction, throughout which the tragic tale of their first encounter will be exposition dumped through dialogue anyway.
Door's that way if you're looking to sneak out. I know that's your thing.
I think that's the jerk who B got with when she was on her break from Jonathan. No way! So B's the coffee girl who ghosted him?
That scene, which itself is followed by another time jump to Claudia and Hallie's destination wedding, where the rest of the movie will take place, they're much worse. Now, to explain why I think front-loading the film with backstory was a big, huge, actively detrimental mistake, it's important to note how crucial it is to the appeal of Beatrice and Benedict, in my opinion, that the particulars of their romantic history are largely left to our imagination.
You have lost the heart of Senor Benedict.
Indeed, my lord. He lent it me a while.
It's not until the second act that their past even comes up. We learn first and foremost of the merry war between them.
There is a kind of merry war betwixt Senor Benedict and her.
Merry is a telling word choice there, isn't it? Ask yourself why Beatrice and Benedict bicker, and on an empirical level, it does make sense to point out their vague shared history, but there's a simpler answer at play. They bicker because they like to.
At the beginning of Much Ado, the action reunites Beatrice and Benedict, and they both make veiled comments about their previous interactions.
I wonder that you will still be talking, Signor Benedict. Nobody marks you.
What? My dear Lady Disdain, are you yet living? So some gentleman or other shall scape a predestinate scratched face.
Scratching could not make it worse, and for such a face as yours were. I know you of old.
This is the sum of all, Signor Claudio!
Shakespeare scholars will tell you that interpreting lines like this is half the joy of Shakespeare, because depending on the interpretation of the production, it could imply so many things. Did they previously date and fall out? If so, why? Did one of them harbour feelings for the other and then get rejected? Have they both been secretly in love the whole time but felt unable to confess? Did they wrong each other in some way, somehow? We don't know, and that's the point. That's half the fun. It's messy and interesting and layered. And that's communicated to the audience all within the space of a few lines of dialogue. Anyone but you manages to not only add in 11 minutes of excruciatingly banal backstory to the first meeting and falling out, but also makes it painful. Because I'm not saying that you can't show your interpretation of what happened between Ben and B before the story's beginning. In fact, that would be very hypocritical of me because I've written my own interpretation of their dynamic before the events of the play in my version. What I am saying is that if you're going to do that, you have to make it interesting enough to spend the time on. Don't do it just to handhold the audience, especially when it doesn't even work. This interaction doesn't make me think that these two people should be together. If anything, it expressly makes me think the opposite.
I just met this guy, and I don't know, it was something.
Are you okay?
Big time! I'm big time okay! I just had to pee for like the last 6 hours.
If you're gonna be a lawyer, you gotta understand negligence and breach and McDonald's versus that lady's habeas corpus.
You used none of those terms properly.
How do you know? You're not a lawyer yet.
Meanwhile, in every version of Much Ado in theatres, I am itching for them to get together.
Love me. Why? What?
My eyes in mine ears. Can this be true?
Is there any way to show such friendship?
A very even way, but no such friend.
May a man do it?
It is a man's office, but not yours.
As Julia points out, their bickering is a mainstay of who they are. They enjoy doing it. It's not mean-spirited, it's fun for them. It's how they communicate. Bisexually, you know?
Sweet Beatrice, wouldst thou come when I called thee?
Yea, Signor. And depart when you bid me.
Oh, stay but till then.
Then is spoken. Fare you well now. And yet, ere I go,
a halting sonnet of his own pure brain fashioned to Beatrice.
And here's another written my cousin's hand, stolen from her pocket, containing her affection unto Benedict.
Oh.
A miracle. Here's our own hands against our hearts.
But Ben and B and anyone but you aren't doing it that way. They're mad at each other. They're sniping and being bitter and petty.
Hate, liar, 5 words.
No, just shut the fuck up.
A woman who uses her sexuality to take advantage of other people.
Cheater, shocking.
Says the woman who cheated on her fiance.
We were on a break, asshole.
You're either broken up for good or you're cheating. Either way, someone's lying to someone.
Fuckboy.
And the implication isn't that this is how they communicate, it's that once the conflict is resolved, that'll stop. Not to mention, these two incredibly smart and verbose individuals only fell out over the most obvious and boring miscommunication of all time. Miscommunication is already one of my least favourite tropes in fiction because it is rarely, if ever, utilised correctly. Most of the time it's used as a simple roadblock for the protagonists, where a single conversation would clear up everything, and the reasons for not having that conversation can be endlessly contrived. This not only makes the characters look dumb, but it's frustrating for audiences. Think How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Notting Hill, or To All the Boys I Loved Before. If your core third act conflict can be solved simply by having two people slow down and talk to each other, and there isn't an actual reason why they can't just do that, it becomes the most grating trope in existence.
You used me to get ahead of your work, you arrogant, backstabbing jerk. You told people you could make any girl fall in love with you, and I was Exhibit A.
Time out!
What?
You've made your main characters stupid. Seemingly out of nowhere. And audiences notice. Miscommunication, when done correctly, can be some of the best storytelling of all time. Much Ado About Nothing actually does it quite well in numerous ways, but none of them are seen here for some reason. Despite literally going off that blueprint, Bea and Benedict are essentially manipulated by other people via deliberate miscommunication into dating each other. We know they're being nudged a certain way, but they don't. Something Anyone But You also gets wrong by having them find out everybody is trying to get them together and decide to just pretend to be together for everyone else's benefit, which only serves to make an already cringeworthy dynamic even worse, with overly affectionate pet names and an extreme out-of-place butt-grabbing scene that ends with some of the worst early 2000s rom-com style slapstick ever conceived.
A mole or something on your butt?
I don't have a mole.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
And perhaps even more importantly, the secondary couple have a misunderstanding that literally creates the final act conflict and almost turns the play from a comedy into a tragedy. None of which has made it into this movie. Pride and Prejudice is one of my favourite novels, and it hinges on these two people not communicating correctly. But there are reasons for that. They're different classes of people. Men and women couldn't exactly pop off into a different room to have a chat back then without it igniting a scandal. And neither of them are aware of the other person's interpretation of events for a long time. So it takes a while to even realise it's a miscommunication and not deliberate actions. The Proposal is a movie that rides the line between good and bad miscommunication, but it all makes sense within the context of who these two people are. She's his boss, they're staying with his family, and there are legal and personal reasons why neither of them feel like they can confess their actual feelings. But Anyone But You creates a conflict that is so stupid and easily resolved that High School Musical did it better almost 20 years ago.
I've always been for the team. She's just someone I met. All right, the singing thing is nothing. Probably just a way to keep my nerves down. I don't know, it means nothing to me. You're my guys, and this is our team. Gabriella is not important.
Good about what? I was going to talk to you about the final callbacks.
I don't want to do the callbacks either. Go Wildcats.
But I...
Me neither.
Do you feel old yet? Bea left for seemingly no reason, without saying anything to him, despite the fact that everything we, the audience, are shown tells us that it wasn't simply a hookup or a one-night stand. Then, when the audience stand-in correctly tells her she's stupid and to go back, she gets there just in time to overhear the end of a conversation where we know that Ben has been bullied by his friend about her ditching him, but all she hears is him saying that she's a mess and he's glad to be rid of her.
The girl's a disaster. She's a nothing.
If that was play Beatrice, she wouldn't have even let that misunderstanding happen because she would have stormed in there and demanded answers. But this version of her just slinks off. Also, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it really genuinely annoys me that they've used a quote from Romeo and Juliet at the start of this and not a quote from Much Ado About Nothing. sure, Here's Much to Hate But More With Love kind of feels like it sums up their dynamic, but that's not really what the quote is about. And also, like, there are so many amazing quotes from Much Ado About Nothing that you could put in instead of that one. Like, for example, in a false quarrel, there is no true valor, which would be a particularly good one considering they've just had a false quarrel. Or the quote that I feel seems to sum up their relationship the most accurately, thou and I are too wise to woo peaceably. Or, if we're going by, like, the hate to love thing, some cupids kill with arrows, some with traps. Isn't that fantastic? Aren't these amazing quotes? Why did we pick one that isn't even from this play? Anyway, I digress. And then we get a time jump where they meet again, and it turns out they're both going to be at the same destination wedding because they're in the wedding party. And all of that information we just learned is parroted back to us again.
You two know each other?
Yeah, we met.
Barely.
So not only is the conflict annoying and dumb, it also wasted 11 minutes of our lives.
Whether analyzed individually or as a pair, the portrayal of these characters in the first 11 minutes is irreconcilable with the portrayal of them throughout the rest of the movie.
Ben and Beatrice should be smarter than this, but they should also be more interesting than this, and good God, more charismatic. And honestly, it might not be the cast's fault as much as it is the scriptwriter and directors, but I don't think the casting is doing this movie any favours. Glenn Powell, and I say this with all the love in the world, is too American for Benedict. He's also too straight to play Benedict, but we'll get to that in a second. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that Americans can't play Shakespeare characters. I'm not even saying that Americans can't play Benedict. What I am saying is that you want the kind of American who doesn't feel like he belongs on a patriotism poster, you know? Glenn Powell is attractive and seemingly delightful, and he's even been a perfect male lead in a rom-com before, see Set It Up.
The two of them are always in this office. Let's just lock them in a room together so they can have sex with each other. When they're boning, we're free.
Does Rick have good Yankees tickets?
No. He watches from the bleachers like a common peasant. Yeah, of course he does. We're full-on parent trapping.
No, we're not.
Okay, I think I've seen the Lindsay Lohan classic enough times to know that we're full-on parent trapping hard.
But he has that square-jawed handsomeness that just does not fit inside an adaptation of Much Ado. Benedict is witty. He's sharp and a little ruthless, but he's also likable enough that his abrasiveness isn't part of the character arc into a better person a la Groundhog Day, which is a genuinely hard balance to achieve when you're doing it right, which is why most people settle for making their characters that should fit into this archetype into much softer versions of themselves so we don't think they're too mean, or completely fuck it up and make them hateable by accident. And something about seeing a man that's just too attractive being mean, everything just feels like punching down. Successful portrayals obviously exist. Harry from When Harry Met Sally, Margaret Tate from The Proposal, Kat Stratford from 10 Things I Hate About You, and Chad Jewick from Do Me Your Service.
네가 매너를 논해 지금?
그래, 매너, M-A-N-N-R.
But they're easier to pull off in books, where we usually have more of an insight into the characters' inner thoughts. Still, it's extremely possible. But not with this casting. Obviously, if I was skewing British, I'd be casting someone like Nicholas Galitzine or Kit Young. People who we know can spit witty dialogue like nobody's business, and who have charisma to spare.
We're in the worst place in the world, on a ship full of people who want us dead, surrounded by monsters who want us in their gut. It's hard for you to put Milo.
Who's Milo?
The goat.
My NDA is bigger than yours, I want you to know that. You're wearing lifts. You know that too, sweetheart.
Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott are also hot contenders. Let them act alongside each other. One of them can be Beatrice. Ncuti Gatwa would kill it. However, that doesn't mean there aren't Americans who are also at the top of my list. Honestly, my number one pick would probably be Dylan O'Brien. Take the sassiness and definite bisexuality of Styles and put some oomph behind it, and you've got Benedict.
God, I hated it. Sorry.
I'm not gonna beg you.
Hey, good. I'm impervious to your influence anyway.
You consider a bribe?
Couldn't meet my price.
Extortion?
Got nothing on me.
Yeah.
I need to have sex, like right now. Someone needs to have sex with me, like today. Like someone needs to sex me right now.
All right, I'll do it.
Whoa!
Plan to stay the night. I like to cuddle.
That was so sweet. Are you kidding?
Yes. I'm kidding.
Okay, you don't toy with a guy's emotions like that, Danny. It's not attractive.
Cole Sprouse seems like a douche in real life, but he'd probably do the role well. If you desperately need him to skew more American handsome, Robbie Amell is right there.
We're sizing up your strengths and weaknesses.
And
You're horrible. I hope you like cats.
Fuck it, get Taylor Sacar Perez in there.
What's that?
I'm just brushing that working class chip off your shoulder.
Hey, you and Mom taught me to question authority.
Bob Morley's Australian, but he'd be brilliant. Nasser Alex Wolff, Omar Rudberg, Tyler James Williams, Andy Samberg, Richard Harmon, and honestly, Jake Johnson would all be perfect.
Stop being so mean to me, or I swear to God, I'm gonna fall in love with you. Where you going? Come back.
Manny Montana would tear it up. If you're doing a younger version, Jack Dylan Grazer would be exceptional.
No way that's gonna buff out.
You gonna pay for that, Freeman?
For the dent you made almost hitting me? Yeah, sure. You guys take these.
Kit Connor is British, but you see the vision. Caleb McLaughlin, Renzi Feliz, Finn Wolfhard, Michael Cimino, or Lucas J. Zuman would also all probably slay it. But I understand it's not entirely the casting's fault. It's very easy, especially in rom-coms, to fall on one side or the other of that tightrope. Anyone But You goes the unlikable route, while also somehow clearly trying to make him much softer than Benedict's original iteration, which is such a baffling choice. I do give genuine credit to Glenn Powell for selling the sass as much as he could, and I know that a lot of the more spiteful, mean-spirited lines were the scriptwriter's decision and fault, but it's wild to watch the character yo-yo between the most considerate man alive and someone who brings up a slight from over a year ago to a woman he barely knows repeatedly, even when his friends have explicitly asked him to be nice for the sake of their upcoming wedding.
A woman who uses her sexuality to take advantage of other people.
This happens with Beatrice too, by the way, because the fun of Much Ado is that both the protagonists fall into that archetype. Your basic rom-coms usually have one snarky bitch, but the best ones have both be able to dish it out as well as they can take it. I'm telling you, enemies to lovers bickering rom-coms owe their existence to Shakespeare. Sydney Sweeney is a perfectly serviceable actress, but I think I discovered watching this movie that she's not very good at comedic acting. She shouldn't be in a rom-com, she should be in a heartbreaking romantic drama a la Nicholas Sparks, you know? Or keep making horror movies, because she's amazing at those. And I'm not sure she'd always be terrible at rom-coms, but she does need to learn better comedic timing. So if I'm recasting Beatrice, there are 100 different women to choose from, and I probably somehow missed some because we're spoiled for choice. If we're going English, Florence Pugh is the extremely obvious and probably most correct choice. Mia Goth or Hayley Atwell would also be fabulous. Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy would be brilliant. Hell, cast Emma as Benedict and hire them both!
Who's that? Fit. My passion is for fashion. What's your passion? Swimming. I really like swimming. You? Me? Yeah, you. Yeah.
Stephanie Sue, Elle Fanning, Quinta Brunson, Jenna Ortega, Rachel Sennett, Brianna Chu, Amy Beth McNulty, Aaliyah Shawkat, Chloe Grace Moretz, and Mae Whitman would all be amazing picks.
It's the word and it's stuck. It's a catch-all.
Oh my god. Get out of here before I murder you.
Are you kidding?
I'll murder you.
Okay.
Amy Acker has already done it once, but give her another shot.
Lady.
And a good soldier to a lady. But what is he to a lord?
A lord to a lord. A man to a man. Stuffed with all honorable virtue.
It is so indeed. He is no less than a stuffed man.
Claudia Dumit and Eliza Taylor are both Australian, but again, perf. This one crow outside is just singing to me. If we're skewing slightly older, Aubrey Plaza, Alison Brie, Stephanie Beatrice, Anna Kendrick, Jenny Slate, Eliza Dushku, or Sandra Oh would also be incredible choices. Fuck it. Give it to Winona Ryder or Christina Ricci. I want those women back in my rom-coms.
Do you have a better idea?
I think what you mean to say is, hi, Misty. It's so great to see you after all this time. Thanks for swinging by and helping us cover up a murder.
If we're going younger, Sadie Sink, Bella Ramsey, or Aman Vellani are the frontrunners for best casting. Honestly, if we're really cooking with gas, cast Brennan Lee Mulligan and Izzy Rowland alongside each other and watch the sparks fly. You know I'm right.
They have a 2 out of 3 chance of going home with it.
That's true.
That's true, Erica. Well mathed.
But I have a secret apartment that I have affairs in. So I can bring it there.
We don't have an ear for that apartment. I trust my partner implicitly.
And you shouldn't.
Don't worry, I'm not just going to list off better choices for the entire rest of the cast as well, but I will say that none of them are particularly well cast either. I think Gutierrez Pete was pretty good, who I'm assuming is supposed to be the stand-in for Don Pedro, although none of the rest of the ensemble are very one-to-one from the original, which is fine. It's an interpretation, and I love those. I just disagree with this one. They've tried to modernize it by seemingly making Claudio and Hero's romance a gay one, which I am all for, being a giant homo myself, but they've absolutely kneecapped it by having it be a pre-established relationship, because part of the fun of Much Ado is watching both couples fall in love. If Anyone But You was going to go to the trouble of wasting 11 minutes on Beatrice and Ben's backstory, they couldn't have spent some time showing us Claudia and Hallie's.
Also, this is a minor nitpick in the grand scheme of every other mistake this movie makes, but making Hero and Claudio the queer couple in this adaptation is, I think, the most baffling decision they've made in the entire film. Because for those of you who haven't read or watched a version of Much Ado, Claudio and Hero's entire relationship falling out hinges on this intense act of misogyny, perpetuated specifically by a straight man and his expectations of what their relationship should look like. And yeah, sure, the cheating thing is bad, but very specifically, it hinges on and around misogyny and how that's really shitty, which is why having Beatrice and Benedict as the foil for that is so interesting within the play, because their relationship on the surface looks more contentious, but is actually a lot more equal-footed.
Do not swear by it and eat it.
I will swear by it that you love me. I will make him eat it that says I love not you.
Will you not eat your word?
With no sauce that can be devised to it.
Whereas Claudio's intentions with Hero are pure, but the moment he finds out she might not be, he suddenly doesn't want anything to do with her. And that's an extremely old-fashioned heterosexual way of looking at things, and it is my personal belief, as somebody who has read and watched a lot of Shakespeare, that he was probably trying to challenge that idea of things, right? By pointing out that that's shitty, by pointing out that Claudio was wrong for making assumptions and not talking to the person he cares about and treating her as an equal, which is an extremely compulsory heterosexual problem to have, and yet they've made that couple in this movie the gay one. You know what I mean? It's just baffling. And in an additional addition to the addition, while I was scrubbing through footage from the movie to use as B-roll over that particular bit about Claudia and Hallie, I caught this line from their wedding.
Claudia, I love you with so much of my heart that none is left to protest.
And it made my blood boil, because that is not a line that either Claudio or Hero say. That is a line that Beatrice says to Benedict.
I love you with so much of my heart that none is left to protest.
So not only does this movie just not give a shit about the side characters, they couldn't even give them some of their own lines to say in their romantic love declaration. And not only that, but the line that they used is not the dynamic of that couple. It's very specifically the dynamic of Beatrice and Benedict. Oh, I'm so mad. I'm so mad. They aren't just the second couple. In the play, their conflict is the hinge the entire last act relies on. And in this reimagining, it felt more like an afterthought, with a bunch of other last act conflicts to add some flavour. And the cute lesbians were pretty unintegral to the story, which was massively disappointing. The parents were boring. On both sides. The ex-boyfriend was an extremely unnecessary and cliched addition, who I assume is supposed to be the new version of Don John? I guess? Honestly, unclear. Either way, you could have removed him from the film and it would have made almost no difference to literally anything that happens. The ex-girlfriend was also so boring that I literally forgot she existed until I googled the cast list to make sure I had the actors right and went, oh yeah, she was also there. So that tells you how little impact she made. Margaret in the play is an entirely different character, so this felt double weird. No hate to the actress at all, she did a perfectly fine job. What I'm saying is that Much Ado About Nothing does not need exes to make the protagonist jealous. They find ways to be jealous on their own. Why are you trying to make the story both more boring and more cliche? Also, Beau, the Australian who flashed his dick in the outside shower, was fine. It felt like they made the movie R-rated just to include that one moment, because the rest of it did not feel steamy enough to deserve that rating. But I digress. We will get to that. The actor who plays Beau seems lovely and the character was fine. It just added very little. It seems like he's maybe supposed to be Horatio or Balthazar? Maybe some combination of the two? Who knows? They swapped having an actual villain trying to trick everybody for his own gain for the two exes showing up, and they removed Dogberry & Co. entirely, which made me very sad as somebody who was once so taken by the performance of Dogberry & Co. in a Much Ado play that during the interval I couldn't get up to get a drink because I was inconsolable with laughter. I'm surprised Haley and I weren't asked to leave the way we were cackling. I understand it's much harder to create a plotline with a bunch of side characters almost entirely unrelated to the main plot until the third act, especially when that third act no longer contains the event that requires those characters, but it still made me sad.
You have been always called a merciful man, but...
Truly, I would not hang a dog by my will, much more a man who hath any honesty in him.
It is very true.
This is the end of the charge.
And speaking of bad storytelling, this is a bad story. To be specific, this is a boring story, which in my opinion is the most unforgivable crime a story can commit. It's one we've all seen before, forgettable, bland, and extremely unlikely to stand the test of time. And I say this as somebody who loves rom-coms and wants them to come back into the cultural zeitgeist. I want big rom-coms back in the cinema again. I crave it like goats crave that mineral. But this isn't how we convince those boring male CEOs of production companies that rom-coms are worth their time. Sure, it made money, but so did Good Luck Chuck and Something Borrowed, and those movies sucked ass. When was the last time you heard one of them mentioned?
That's what I thought. Which wouldn't bother me so much if it wasn't based on an actual good story. You didn't even need to come up with anything new. You could have essentially copy-pasted the original plot with some slight tweaks to characters and updated dialogue, and you would have been golden. And if you wanted to take it in a slightly different direction, a la 10 Things I Hate About You, which took some of the more abusive and misogynistic parts of the original play and made it more explicitly feminist, although it is up for debate as to whether Shakespeare's intentions were misogynistic or whether he intended to parody male frailty in the face of headstrong women. Either way, the movie took it much further towards framing the boys' actions as wrong and something to make up for, while also seeing the women as whole characters.
Afterwards, I told him I didn't want to anymore because I wasn't ready, and he got pissed and he dumped me. After that, I swore I would never do anything just because everyone else was doing it, and I haven't since.
Why didn't you tell me?
I wanted to let you make up your own mind about him.
Give me a chance
You were paid to take me out by the one person I truly hate. I knew this was a setup.
Then that was also possible, and we have multiple movies as examples of how to do it correctly. Bridget Jones's Diary nails Pride and Prejudice, but with an entirely different take on the characters of the modern day.
She lives just round the corner from you.
Mother, I do not need a blind date, particularly not with some verbally incontinent spinster who smokes like a chimney, drinks like a fish, and dresses like her mother. What I'm trying to say, very inarticulately, is I like you. Very much.
Apart from the smoking, and the drinking, and the vulgar mother, and the verbal diarrhea.
No, I like you very much. Just as you are.
Cruel Intentions gets the vibe of Les Liaisons Dangereuses pretty spot on, despite changing certain key elements.
I have a reputation to uphold.
Oh, but diddling the therapist's daughter's a challenge.
She was overcharging.
Easy A completely morphs The Scarlet Letter, originally a rather morose tale, into one of the funniest rom-coms of that decade.
Give him hell.
She's All That, and a lot of the movies that rely heavily on the she learns to be more accepted by society and he falls in love with her trope, i.e. glasses on bad, glasses off hot, are based on Pygmalion and My Fair Lady.
What do you have in mind?
Hell, we can all tell that The Lion King is supposed to be Hamlet and it's an animated musical about lions. Changing stuff to make it fit into a new genre or era or medium isn't inherently bad as long as you're thinking about why you're making those changes and whether they actually serve or detract from the adaptation. One day I will make that video about how to make a good adaptation. We will get to it. Making Bea and Ben's meet cute so basic and also making their falling out so contrived doesn't immediately endear you to these people. Not only that, but they're both very cookie-cutter people. Beatrice went to law school but doesn't know if she wants to be a lawyer. She broke up with her ex because he was too boring and safe. Benedict seems douchey on the surface, but he has a heart of gold. And we know this because he tells her about his special wrench.
Why do you have a giant wrench?
My mom gave me that. She said, no matter how broken something is, there's always a way to fix it. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm talking to you about my mom right now.
As an aside, this line infuriates me, by the way, because of how stilted it is. Why am I talking about my mother right now? Because you're answering a question that she asked. That's not weird. That's barely intimacy. Why are we drawing attention to it as if it's somehow significant? Unless you make it clear that he doesn't even talk about his mother to his close friends, it's just weird. Why are we framing the barest minimum amount of getting to know someone as like a deep emotional connection? Because it's not. The destination wedding isn't a terrible way to get everybody in the same place, considering that in the original it's all taking place at Leonato's estate in Italy, but it definitely could have been handled better. Adding a fake relationship into what is already a fairly interesting dynamic, i.e. everybody knows Ben and Bea are into each other and tries to trick them into getting together, ends up completely destroying the momentum of it. While I can't be certain, because I was not in the writer's room, I'm almost positive they made this decision to show how smart Bea and Ben are, by having them outsmart the narrative, but it honestly just muddies the water.
You know, maybe we should do it. Just tell everyone we're together.
What?
It would solve that problem for me, and that problem for you. They've already gone through all of the bullshit trying to trick us into each other's arms. Let's just embrace it.
They're smart enough to figure out they're being manipulated, but still too dumb to clear up a single misunderstanding from a year ago. Pull the other one. Plus, while I usually enjoy the fake dating trope a lot, their overzealous performance was genuinely cringy in a way I don't actually think they were going for.
Yes, we are very happy.
Happiest.
Yep.
You've already changed so much of the original. You can't even keep to the bare bones. Also, as we learned in the 2000s, you can't coast on chemistry alone. especially when this movie's definition of chemistry seems to be hot people stand next to each other, therefore chemistry. I've seen more spice and romantic tension in the kinds of K-dramas that culminate in dead fish kisses, so I'm not overly impressed. The original play has 2 distinct but interwoven main plots, and at least 1 or 2 side ventures and asides throughout those plots. Beatrice and Benedict's bickering and their friends attempting to get them together,
Rather than endure 3 words conference with this harpy. I cannot endure my lady tongue.
and Claudio and Hero's perfect relationship almost being destroyed by somebody trying to frame Hero for cheating. Within those 2 storylines, you also learn that Leo is like a father to everybody there, Pedro is happy for his friends that they found partners, but, depending on the performance, is probably a little lonely himself. His brother John is a villain who schemes to ruin his brother's friends' lives out of jealousy and resentment, and he has 2 friends who help him, one of whom is so devoted it is often played as a queer kind of infatuation. Margaret is one of Hero's servants, who is unwillingly part of the scheme to ruin her as a consequence of her dating the straight one of John's henchmen, Borachio. She's not a bad person, but she's uncouth and brazen, which is in stark contrast to Hero's other lady's maid, Ursula. Balthazar is essentially the group musician, helping everybody out and keeping things merry, and he flirts with Margaret, which some performances use to imply she'll find a better partner after the story ends. And, as previously mentioned in the C-plot, Dogberry, the chief of the Night Watchmen, and his band of merry men serve as delightful comic relief, bumbling around and missing everything right up until they finally, almost accidentally, put together the correct pieces to absolve Hero of guilt. As I said earlier, they feel completely disconnected from most of the main story until the very end, but I have seen performances where they are the best part of the whole thing. I've also seen them be underutilized, so I understand not including them if you're cutting things, but they do provide some balance between more plot-heavy scenes.
Be vigilant, I beseech you.
How much can you remember about any of the side characters in Anyone But You? I'm genuinely asking. Do they all have motivations and conflicts that serve the story, or at the very least provide a break from the plot? I'll tell you in case you haven't seen it. No, they don't. Peter's funny sometimes.
You got cheese and bread. You didn't miss one ingredient.
The parents are supportive? Probably.
You know, you looked like that back in the day.
No, I didn't. That guy's made out of cobblestone.
But that's about it in terms of overall characterization. I don't know anything about Claudia and Hallie. I don't know anything about John except that he's kind and boring. Honestly, if we're breaking it down, I barely know who Bea and Ben are, and I think most of that comes from the prior knowledge of the play. Ben is there. He's tall and handsome and snarky. People seem to like him. He's a lot goofier and kind of dumber than Benedict, which is okay, but still not a clear enough picture of who he is. He works for a bank, which is like... Okay, not to get too into my own headcanons, but Benedict would hate that. Even if you make him a Goldman Sachs employee, make him despise it. In the same way he worked for the establishment in the original, but seemingly only because his friends were there. Or maybe he's been forced by circumstance, like his parents made him, or because he'd be destitute without it. Or, I don't know, give him a more interesting job. We are past the point of Goldman Sachs employees being the creme de la creme of society, and most of us associate bankers and stock traders with finance bros now, which is essentially the anti-Benedict archetype. Ben is strange to me because of the yo-yoing character. Like I said, he's just as snipey at Bea as she is at him, always rises to the occasion, but he's also overly considerate of everybody. But why? Is one of them a coping mechanism? Is the consideration real but calculated? Or are the petty barbs his facade? His characterization screams neither. He's just both, for no reason. Except his wrench, sorry. I forgot.
I don't know why I'm talking to you about my mom right now.
Bea no longer wants to be a lawyer, which is her main conflict in the film, outside of her dealings with Ben, which is one thing. She eats food when it's too hot.
All right, wait to cool down. You just saw me take it off the burning stove.
She's snarky. But, like, who is she to the people in her lives? Why are they willing to put up with her increasingly erratic and destructive behavior throughout the movie? Why do they want to get her together with Ben or John so bad? If she doesn't want to be a lawyer, what does she want out of life? Is the point of her arc that she doesn't know what she wants? In which case, she should have more of a solid idea by the end of the movie. But she really doesn't. All we know she wants at the end of the movie is Ben, which is, not great. Like, I'm not going to call this movie misogynistic just because her only known goal is to get together with a guy in finance.
A man in finance, the trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes, finance.
But it's not my favourite thing, and it's an easy solve, to be honest. It passes the Bechdel test, but so does the original Much Ado About Nothing, which was written in the 1600s, so that's not a high bar to clear. One might even say required, considering that this movie was made in 2023. Who is Bea? I actually want to know. Is she supposed to be a blank slate so we can project onto her? No, because she's also sassy and has secrets from her family, so there is something approaching characterization there. Oh, I almost forgot. She's clumsy. Again, I'm not going to call a movie misogynistic for giving a woman a negative character trait. Everybody has those. I'm in full support, actually. But clumsy women is such a tired trope from movies of old that it's often the first thing that parodies and sketches bring up, excepting ponytails and glasses.
She's got glasses and a ponytail. Oh, look at that. She's got paint on her overalls. What is that? Guys, there's no way she could be prom queen.
Female rom-com protagonists are clumsy because if you give women any negative traits, people find a way to dislike them, even when they don't mind seeing those traits in men. But clumsiness is okay because it's quirky. You can't dislike a girl because she's clumsy. She's just a girl.
I'm literally just a girl. Like some of these.
Oh, shut the up. I will burn this table. I'm literally just a girl. Shut the up. Why, you think you're stupid?
Sometimes, yeah.
But because you're a what? What are you talking about? I'm just a girl.
I'm just
Shut the up. Act like an adult. You're just an adult.
And honestly, in a lazy writer's room, it's also an easy way to move the plot along without having to come up with something more interesting. And also because it makes them more aligned with the traditional damsel archetype, which Beatrice doesn't fall into in the play, by the way. Not every clumsy girl is written to be a damsel, but rewatch some of those classic rom-coms with fresh eyes and see how often her clumsiness is used to get the male lead to step in or causes a problem that he has to solve. Lainey and She's All That, Cam and Good Luck Chuck, Daphne and What a Girl Wants, Mia and the Princess Diaries, Bella Swan in Twilight, Kate Reddy and I Don't Know How She Does It, Natalie and Charlie's Angels, Evie and The Mummy and Anna and Leap Year, just to name a few. Some of these movies I actually love. I won't hear a single bad word said about Evelyn Carnahan. She's the love of my life, and those two movies are pretty much perfect films. Also, they managed to essentially write that trait out in the second one, so I forgive them. I even think clumsiness as a lazy plot device is okay. Mia and Nicholas falling into the fountain in The Princess Diaries 2 is a genuinely good slapstick moment, and it heightens the negative tension of the scene while abating the romantic tension enough for the scene to transition out.
Mia.
All I'm saying is, if a female character is introduced and one of the first things you find out about her is that she's clumsy, be wary. It's impossible to unsee it once you notice. I think it annoys me even more that the director and co-writer of this film also directed Easy A. He didn't write Easy A, but he's literally had first-hand experience adapting a classic for modern audiences in a way that is actually palatable and fun, and then he just ignored it, I guess. Anyway, the larger point I'm trying to make is that this story is unsuccessful in most of what it sets out to do, which is a bummer. The most important part of that being the final beats of the film, but we will get to it. It's incoherent when you think about it for more than 2 minutes, the characterizations are inconsistent, and it's not even a good movie, let alone a good adaptation. Which is embarrassing, because honestly, of all the Shakespeare plays you could adapt into a modern story, Much Ado might be the easiest one, because if you do absolutely nothing but tweak the dialogue into today's, it's basically already one. Because as previously mentioned, it is the blueprint. How do you fuck up the blueprint? Did you read it upside down?
Something else that I've noticed while scrubbing through the footage is this scene of Beatrice having a conversation with her ex-boyfriend while playing chess. And like, when I tried to explain this to my mum, she didn't quite get it immediately until I explained the significance of games of chess specifically as a symbol in film. Like, that's the kind of shit you learn in your first year of film school, screenwriting, right? Like, if you want two characters to appear as intellectually equal while having a discussion, you put them playing chess. So to have Beatrice playing chess with somebody who is not Ben, girl, this movie fails on so many fundamental levels that it's actually baffling. Like, think about every scene you've ever seen in a movie or a TV show with two characters playing chess. They're either rivals or there's underlying tension happening, right? And if you're thinking about Asian media, it's usually Go. Like, if you think about the show The Glory that was on Netflix last year, playing Go is a significant theme in that because of how strategic you have to be, right? Because chess and Go are games of strategy. So to have the singular game of chess in this movie be played with B and somebody who is not her supposedly intellectually equal love interest. Girl, what were they doing? Like, what the fuck?
These movies have big budgets, and I know for a fact that none of it is spent in the writer's room, or on making sure there are writers on set to tweak and adjust things. I'm not going to go on an anti-capitalist rant about how corporations' desperation to cut costs in movie making and make everything more streamlined is making woefully disappointing media and marks a very steep downward trend in quality for the foreseeable future for as long as they refuse to pay writers for what they're owed and actually service the story instead of lining CEOs' pockets. But I could. I just wanted you to know that. Which actually brings me to my biggest gripe with this film. Everybody in this movie is rich. Ben works for Goldman Sachs. Bea is a law student at Boston University. Her family can afford to host a destination wedding at their holiday home in Australia. And every activity and set piece in this movie is the stuff of bourgeoisie aspiration. The holiday home is huge and right on the beach. They go on a private boat cruise around Sydney Harbour. There's a big enough wedding party that either their friends are all wealthy enough to pay their way over there, or they're paying for the lot. And either way, gross.
To celebrate.
In Australia! We're getting married in Sydney!
I'm not saying that Much Ado About Nothing is a Marxist masterpiece. All I'm saying is that it could be. Nah, I'm just messing with you. Unless. Anyway, like I said, the original isn't exactly promoting class warfare. They're all staying in what appears to be quite a lavish estate in Italy, hosting parties, and generally it seems that most of the characters are, at the very least, comfortable. A few of the minor characters are written to be lower class, such as Margaret and Dogberry, which is riffed on a few times throughout the play, but it never claimed to be a piece about the proletariat. However, this movie feels obnoxiously wealthy. Most rom-coms, at the very least, pretend that at least one of their protagonists isn't super rich, even while living in a penthouse apartment in downtown New York. And you pretend to believe them, despite the fact that you can see said apartment, because the narrative supports it in other ways. But this one makes it pretty clear right off the bat that these people are all not only comfortably wealthy, but they're actually not even middle class. They're upper class. Which makes the bickering more annoying, and also makes some of the conflicts legitimately insufferable. Bea went to law school, but she doesn't want to be a lawyer, and she doesn't know how to tell her family. This is a secret that hangs over the entire movie, until it kicks off the third act conflict via another miscommunication.
Beatrice.
You quit school?
You're just gonna pour gasoline on everything you've worked for?
Who told you I quit law school? Was it Ben?
You quit school?
You told him I quit school?
No, I didn't.
Well, you told Pete. Pete told us.
I told you what?
We're gonna find out at some point.
That's not for you to decide.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
It doesn't matter how we found out.
Found out what?
She quit law school.
You're real shit.
I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
There's a reason why you're alone. No one can trust you.
Yeah, what's your reason?
Guys like you.
Keep telling yourself that.
These characters are supposed to be intelligent. Don't forget that. And not only are her family basically fine with it after being shocked for half a second, but also, like, she'll be fine, regardless. It's not like she needed to become a lawyer to support her family. That would be a real conflict. She's a blonde, attractive, cis white woman with a law degree and a wealthy family. That's actually the definition of the opposite of an issue. I'm not saying that if you're conventionally attractive, white, and female presenting that you can't have problems. I'm just saying that she doesn't. The law degree will get her in the door to most job interviews unless she's making a really drastic career pivot, and if it really goes to shit, she can move back in with her extremely wealthy family. Or her wealthy sister and her wife, or possibly, the worst option but still viable, lean on her boyfriend for help, you know, because he works at Goldman Sachs. I still can't get over that, by the way, can you tell? I'm also not saying that you can't write compelling stories about rich people. Realistically, most of the stories throughout history, due to the publishing industry being gatekept by class for a lot of it, are about middle or upper class people, or even royalty. That's fine. I'm just saying, if you're trying to bring the age of the rom-com back, I wouldn't start with two conventionally attractive blonde people who look and act like they've never had to worry about money. In this day and age, baby girl, your target audience is my age. Everybody I know in their 20s is poor and stressed, and even those who are financially comfortable aren't B's level of comfortable. You feel? It just seems a little icky. I don't care if these people I have absolutely nothing in common with and never will get together or not, especially when the only thing stopping them from being together is their own inability to perform conflict resolution. Oh, and speaking of, after yet another contrived misunderstanding, or three, Bea decides to leave her sister's wedding, which is legitimately fucking rude. By the way, if I found out my sister stormed out of my wedding crying because of some bullshit romantic drama, I'd kick the fuck off for making my day about her, because that's fucking selfish. But I guess Hallie is more forgiving than me. Bea goes to Opera House for plot reasons that would make no sense even in a better written story, but sure, we're here now. The wedding guests encourage Ben to go after her, and he decides that rather than, like, driving, or calling a taxi, or heck, even hiring a helicopter himself, he will throw himself into the ocean and convince the rescue copter to fly him to the Opera House.
Why don't you just pick people up by boat?
Just go get the girl.
Thank you!
I know it's absolutely not fair of me to just point at something in a movie and go, bah, that wouldn't happen. And I usually think that people who do that are the enemies of fun. But in this case, I'll make an exception. What the fuck, Ben? Not only are you stupid, but you also took an emergency vehicle and its personnel away from people who might have actually needed it, to do some kind of grand romantic gesture for somebody who barely had a head start on you. Then they clear up the stupid, pointless, new misunderstandings and return to the wedding as a couple. Like Claudia and Hallie admit they faked their earlier fight to get them together. Which not only makes no sense, but also makes me worry about the codependency issues in this family.
Oh, no. We staged a fake fight so you guys would feel bad and make up. Are you marrying your precious itinerary or me?
Well, if that's how you feel, I don't know why we're doing this anymore.
I love my family, but I'm not so invested in their potential romantic suitors that I pretend to fuck up my own relationship to deal with it. Again, don't want to just point out logical inconsistencies in movies and go, that doesn't make sense, but like, would any of you do that for your sister or your brother's best friend? Think of the person you love most in the world outside of your romantic partnerships, if that applies to you. Would you opt to fake the breakdown of your own relationship on the eve of your wedding in order to maybe get that person together with somebody you've seen them interact with for like a few days at most of which was them being antagonistic towards each other? At least in Much Ado, these people have all known both Beatrice and Benedict a long time, so you can buy them getting sick of watching them dance around it and trying to kickstart the process. Anyone but you does not have such luxuries, largely because it didn't write them in. So this just comes off as completely bizarre. Anyway, the movie ends and both of them live happily ever after, but like, why should I care? Are they actually suited to each other, or do they just have chemistry? As Julia Cudney pointed out, the original is predicated on them both being equal participants in their sparring. It's their whole dynamic, even after they get together. But this movie kind of implies that once they're together, the bickering will stop. In this movie, the bickering is more of an expositional or plot device than it is part of their characterizations, which is really disappointing. It means we haven't really actually seen who these two are together, as a couple, except for the few brief moments late at night in the kitchen at the start and towards the end. And if I'm going off those scenes alone, I think their relationship will be fine, but also not something I would have invested an hour and a half of my life into watching, you know?
I didn't kiss Margaret, she kissed me. I know that's a bullshit excuse, but it's true.
I couldn't find a moving train.
I tend to judge most rom-coms on whether I would watch a well-written sequel about them. It's a similar rule to TV shows and the will they won't they couples. If they build up getting the couple together for years, and then the seasons after the couple get together, they run out of steam, it feels disappointing. If you can't keep that dramatic tension present even after they're together, what are you even building towards? That's why Ben and Leslie in Parks and Rec worked, or Eleanor and Chidi in The Good Place. Honestly, most Michael Schur joints have the sauce where this is concerned. Lily and Marshall in How I Met Your Mother were also handled pretty well throughout most of the seasons, disregarding the one where they break up, but even that was handled okay. So were Barney and Robin, because that last episode was stupid, out of character for both of them, and didn't happen. David and Patrick in Schitt's Creek, Sean and Juliet in Psych, see video here, Cassie and Cole in 12 Monkeys, eventual video incoming, Mickey and Ian in Shameless, usual Shameless level messiness notwithstanding, and Luke and Lorelai in Gilmore Girls also worked great until the general writing quality of the entire show went downhill and ruined some of it. Which goes twice for Logan Eccles and Veronica Mars, which I consider one of the OG, this show is actually better when the two will they won't they people are together examples.
Much. Your bang?
Until he fucking ruined it. Fucking dick. Anyway. If you're looking for a perfect movie representation of this, it's clearly the aforementioned Mummy movies. The first one builds a romance between Evie and Rick and gets them together at the end. The second one is set years later when they're already married with a child. And it's literally seamless. They still bicker, they're still romantic and sexual tension, but they're also comfortable with each other in a way they weren't in the first one. And they're ridiculously, adorably in love.
We're smarter than him. And taller,
Exactly. That's why we're the ones who are going to find it.
Because we're taller? What?
That's why I love you.
Nice try.
Perfect, iconic, beautiful. Give me more movies like this every few years and I'll live forever. I don't expect every rom-com to deliver me perfection in the way that The Mummy or The Princess Diaries 2 or Palm Springs or 10 Things I Hate About You did, because that's a steep ask. All I'm saying is, if we're touting a movie as the return of the rom-com, I'd rather we try to reach those heights than settle for Netflix release levels of mediocrity. Because it feels like even the less literally perfect 90s and early 2000s rom-coms understood the genre better than most of the movies being made nowadays. Sure, they were formulaic, but also the formula worked, and there was also always some heart mixed in with that. And when there wasn't, we usually didn't let them succeed. I'm looking directly at you, Gigli.
It's turkey time.
Huh?
Gobble, gobble.
Some of the rom-coms I enjoyed rewatching the most aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they have heart. They feel real, even when the characters are doing outlandish things or things I wouldn't do or don't agree with, because they're actually written for their actions to be consistent with their character. She's all that is cliche, but it's fun. Bridget Jones's Diary falls into an unfortunate level of early 2000s fat shaming, but she feels like a real human person in all her cringe fail glory. The Wedding Singer is an Adam Sandler movie, but it's so well written that I can even overlook the silly grand dramatic gesture of singing on a plane, and I truly believe those two characters are married to this day. The Holiday is a cozy rom-com that I rewatch every 2 years just to delight in Jude Law's single dad falling for the uptight American living in his sister's house. Crazy Stupid Love isn't my favourite, but I literally go back and just rewatch all of the Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling scenes because not only do they have chemistry...
Fuck! Seriously? It's like you're photoshopped.
You do? No.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I do. I don't. Who would have that? I would have that.
How much was it?
$5,000.
But their characters are consistent, and the conflicts arise because of their growth, and that's interesting. On paper, While You Were Sleeping should be a movie I should hate. But watching Lucy lie because she's been so alone for so long and she just wants a family for Christmas, Jack's suspicions about her coupled with his genuine concern about her make it endlessly rewatchable for me.
I think the sofa should go right there.
When she exposition dumps about her father to Jack, it doesn't feel shoehorned in the way the wrench conversation does. It happens after they've gotten closer, when he's softened towards her and they've spent the day together, and he's already shown that he listens to her.
Well, what was he like?
He's a lot like me. Dark hair, flat chest.
What do you remember most about him?
Oh, that. Okay. Bill Pullman should do another rom-com. Anyway, most modern Netflix-level rom-coms feel like cardboard cutouts of their forefathers, or cheap Temu imitations made on an assembly line. There are still good ones in there. I'm not saying there aren't. Even on Netflix, despite all the smack I've talked about them. But they're becoming rarer because it's much easier to make 5 cheap, mediocre movies than it is to make 2 good ones where the writers are paid well enough to care. Like I've been saying this whole time, Anyone But You is bad. If you think I missed anything, I would also like to direct you to Little Shop of Ali's video about it, because it was right on the money. So once you finish this one and Julia's, go watch that. This was an R-rated movie, but it didn't really feel like one. There was a sex scene and some partial nudity, but change that to a fade to black and the movie is basically PG. Maybe I'm just jaded from years of watching BLs where the sex scenes are so explicit that I feel like a peeping Tom. But if you're aiming for R-rated, at least try and hit it. Don't just flash me half a dick and some tits and call it a day. The worst it got was them attempting to ram their hands up each other's butts. And that was too dumb to really feel worth a rating. Shoot for the moon and go NC-17 with it if that's what you're really trying to sell. And also, stop desecrating one of my favourite stories in the world, please and thank you. This is the worst monkey's paw wish I've made yet. I got exactly what I'd been begging for my entire life, a modern rom-com adaptation of a classic and one of my favourites to boot, and then it collapsed in on itself like an undercooked souffle. I also kept trying to call it Anything But You repeatedly, both in person and in this essay, so if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. Aside from the fact that it rolls off the tongue better, their dynamic never really felt like anyone but you. It felt more like, you'll do. And that's such a downgrade from interactions like this.
By my sword, Beatrice, thou lovest me.
Do not swear by it and eat it.
I will swear by it that you love me. I will make him eat it that says I love not you.
Will you not eat your word?
With no sauce that can be devised to it.
That I need to go lie down. Anyway, watch this space for my eventual modern Much Ado novel, and then wait another 5 years for it to be turned into a miniseries. Maybe if enough of you express interest in it, I'll actually finish it. I'm officially diagnosed with ADHD and on Ritalin now, so it might be enough to kickstart my motivation again. I hope this video was a welcome one and more upbeat than the previous couple, and the next one will be. I did spend some of it complaining, but in a fun way, about something with very little stakes that doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. I actually want to make video essays that make a difference and research things that matter, but I don't want that to be all I do, especially when there are much more well-oiled channels out there who do that perfectly. Sometimes I just want to rant about dumb shit as a breather between heavy topics. If you're on board with that, this channel is for you. Feel free to like and subscribe, turn the bell on, and comment your heart out. If you can afford to, sign up for my Patreon, but only if you can afford to. Only if you can afford to. If my channel is not for you, I understand that, and I wish you the best. If you liked Anyone But You, I don't understand you, but I respect your right to your opinion, and I'm surprised you made it this far into the video. I'm not slating people who enjoyed the movie. If it made you happy, I'm genuinely glad. I'm only frustrated at the continued drop in quality of storytelling, especially for a movie that sold itself as bringing rom-coms back. If you're interested in hearing more of my opinions, or maybe getting sneak peeks of my novels and writing projects other than this channel, feel free to join my book club Discord linked below. It's mainly centered around reading queer books, but I'm also aiming to spotlight other minority stories and authors too, such as people of color, people with physical disabilities, and neurodivergent people. It's also kind of half a YouTube channel Discord, because I had no idea, I couldn't fathom making a Discord just about me and my channel. It felt too weird. So there will also be updates on there about the channel. The first book we're reading together is A Lady for a Duke, which is a trans Regency romance that I've been in love with for a year and bullied all my friends into reading it so hard that one of them suggested we start a book club. So here we are. The next book we haven't decided yet, I'll be putting a poll up in the Discord sometime this week. The next few videos are bigger, bolder, and might even involve a few cameos from voices you might know, if I'm lucky. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Annyeong. I'd like to give a special sweaty shout out to my patrons, starting with the absolutely amazing Roman Empire subscribers Ian Musa and Selena Mealand. I remain blown away by your support, and I'm delighted to have you along for the ride. Additional shout out to my incomparable rooftop dwellers, Cast, Dana Brand, Nick Hook, BPs, Ace of Lights, Cal Kale, Best Stressed, Sunshine Shay, Deborah Laban, Sarah Parker Schemmelt, Ghost Porcupine, Callum McLeod of Clan McLeod, Whoop Whoops, Lilac Rose, CS, Rihanna, Carolina, Chris K, E. Teddy, Renalia Delgrange, Jellywa, Tsunayama, and finally my wonderful introverts, Wilma H, Megan Shelton, Natraset, Summer in the Locked Tomb, CL Moriel, Paula, Stephanie Goodrich, Swarm of Bees, Alyssa Likeness, I See a Glade, Ellie, Still a Magic Owl, Amy, Blue, Nathan Fraughton, Claire McCowlin, Mikey Burtwhistle, Kay, Adriana Rodriguez, Madison Diebler, Fox, Joanna E, Dan R, Spark, Bryony, Kanane Jones, Nemo, Jumping Juniper, Sydney Sullivan, Skylar, Nina Nadine Frockling, Elias Bornbach, Laura E, Jonas Holzer, Eric Ramey, Eric Nelson, Romy Begel, Ruth, Reds Heads, Catherine A, Marcel De Jong, Jim Willits, Theresia, Caroline Baker, Mark DeLucci, Claire Gmur, Chris K, Nemo Boy, Commander Rainsworth, Sonia Shapiro, Candy99, The Saddest Tadpole, Don Quixote, Lizzie Newman.